Hello, friends. Welcome to the stream. All right. Are you all ready to do some actual gameplay stuff today? Because I am. I want to address one thing before we get deep into it, though. And I know we're tired of dealing with optimizing, but I wanted to do one last thing that I realized. So let's talk big picture for just a second. I'm actually going to go back. So this is Skeleton Fire Mage branch. I'm actually going back to inventory optimization for 1 minute. So I'm going to just stash these changes. We'll be right back, I promise. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and pull this branch so it's up to date, and we are going to quickly talk about what we accomplished last week and the prior week. So what we initially realized was that during saving and loading, there were a lot of calls to add and remove item, because naturally when you're loading and saving the game, you're going to have a lot of these calls, right? So we decided that instead of making the UI update every single time we do a save file or remove item call, load item or remove item, we decided we were just going to wait until the very end and then call the on inventory update function. So that's what we ended up doing, and it worked great. It reduced a lot of the overall loading times because we found out that every time on inventory update occurred, it would delete everything from the list and then would re-add everything from the list again. But let's think a little bigger picture, and what I mean is that we were talking about how do we optimize this overall? Is it just going to be for inventory loading, or is it going to be anything else? And what we came up with was we actually can do this not only here, but in general. We can batch up every add or remove item call in one tick. For example, let's say that sometime in the future in the game, we want to give the player like 10 items. We just want to give it to them on a whim, right? Well, if we give them 10 items in one frame, we're going to have the same issue we had before. Then we have to implement something that says, okay, during that time, we're going to have to wait a while. I'm calling it deferring. We're deferring the item GUI updates until after this event has occurred. So more generally speaking, instead of just doing the UI updates when we are saving a file or anything like that, why don't we just make it in general, we can't do any UI updates all on one tick? And that made me realize that's actually what we were trying to accomplish this whole time. So let's now go back to the inventory generator. The way we fixed a lot of the loading and save file long loading time was we added these two flags. We actually added not checks for them. You can't be saving the game and you can't be resetting the game in order for these to occur. But thinking about it further, all of these things don't have to occur immediately. This is for the UI, right? Why not, if we update an inventory, we set a flag that says on the next tick, update all the inventories, update the UI. Then, if we have any more updates on that same tick, we also have already said we're not going to do the UI updates right away. We're going to defer it until the next tick and then do the UI update. The UI update is much quicker if we have a state of inventory after all the add or remove item calls are done, and then do it. This would make things a lot faster and actually very clean. And we don't have to only apply it to this. This is a very general approach that we can apply to updating anything. If we update any inventory creator, right, we can also do the same thing for anything that will remove everything and add everything back in. So, let's see, like here, remove all components and then add button, right? We can do that there as well if we wanted to. But we're going to be sticking to this for now. So, because there's a little more complications when it comes to the other ones sometimes rely on, oh, this item is being added, well, then we're just only going to update one specific thing or remove one specific thing. You can see it's a little more complicated than that, but in this case, this is very easy. So I'm first going to remove these two Boolean checks, and just by itself, this would make it so we have long load times again. But instead, we're not going to call this right away. So what we're going to do now, and this is where the magic kind of begins, is that we're going to find where we called this and completely change how we're going to call that. So we're actually going to go, let's see here. I know this exists somewhere. We saw it earlier. I just have to find it again. And maybe it's not here. Maybe it's under, like on inventory update, right? But either way, we have to call that on inventory update callback to get any of this to work in the first place. Going back to save file, I'll now show what we did originally. When we had those things there, we would call this menu inventory slots update function. And we would do it for every category after we have accomplished everything. So you can see we just bundled this all up into one little package, one little function, and done it all there. Well, we're now going to change this again. So I'm getting rid of this code, and instead, yes, we still set the flag, so we can put that back. For any location that we had this before, we can say quit allowed is true again. Naturally, that's what we expect and what we want. We do that also here and here. Oh, I also want to bring up another thing. The actual unit test for Skeleton Fire Mage, when we started working on it, failed. And I'm not sure if it was because of something we did recently, but something to keep in mind. The, or not unit test, excuse me, the CI build. The one on the site, the action, it actually failed for our Skeleton Fire Mage branch that we did recently. And I don't know if there was something I just didn't include or what, but we're gonna have to look at that later in case. But for now, this code is going to be moved somewhere else. So we're going to be making a whole nother system to manage this. So on top of removing it from load game, we're also going to remove it from save game. So save game also will have this. So we use the set quit allowed flag, and then we're supposed to reset it when we're done. And that would be right down here. So this one we don't have to actually change anything. At least I don't think we do. Where is that for loop though? That's the next question, because, well, I guess for saving we don't do anything, right? It would be under reset game. Okay, I understand now. So, what's the next thing we have to do? Let's go back to adventuresillustoria.cpp and let's go to our reset game function, as that's where or reset level, I want to say. We have reset level states, right? And in here, we found out that we had to reset, I think, those other two inventories. Yeah, right here, that's what we do. So we make sure we clear those before doing anything else. And regardless if we clear or we add, we don't want these to update the UIs immediately. We want to defer the updates for later. So that's the next system we're going to be adding. Instead of clear, we would obviously call it remove item, but just as well, we would add something for add item. So let's first look at the remove item function. And here's how we're going to do it. So everything in here we can leave untouched, and let's just say we're going to add something. So let's see here. These would all be updates. So you can see here we have menu inventory slots updated. These all get called anytime we remove an item, but it wouldn't actually run if we just did a bunch of clears. So now we're going to defer this call. So we're never going to update GUI inventories immediately. We're going to wait one tick and do it later. So now we're going to make a flag. I'm going to call it, let's make it a static variable. We'll just call this the menu inventory slots need updating. We're going to make a function that we set, which is going to notify the menu system that, hey, these have to be called and it's out of date. So we could say like inventory slots are dirty, set dirty. I think that's a good name for it. Dirty is typically used to indicate that, hey, you have some typically cached system and you want to mark it to say this is not, the cache is like out of date now, and I need a fully refreshed, in this case, a fully refreshed inventory slot for the UI, versus like a dirty set would be like, it doesn't match what the current data is supposed to represent. So it's kind of like connecting a UI, but saying it's dirty now, the UI needs to be updated. So I think that's what we're going to do. I'm arguing, or I'm debating if I want to put in here to actually have a true flag, or just make set dirty, and that means it automatically marks as dirty. I think I'm just going to put set dirty. I don't think, like, we don't have a use of setting the dirty flag back to false. So once we set to true, we should be able to do that. So now I get to delete this. This is a brand new function. It doesn't exist yet, but it's what we're going to use. And then we're going to do the same, but for add item. So we're going to go to add item, and in a similar manner, just like we have insert into stored inventory, we have here, again, menu inventory slots updated. We're going to once again send a inventory slots are set dirty, and same with insert into stage inventory category, where we do exactly the same thing right here. So with all the places removed where we did on menu update, replaced with inventory slots set dirty, now this means we can manage the system from somewhere else and defer it to later. So now we're going to go to the menu header, and we're going to add the declaration for this function. And it's going to be a static function, as it can literally be called from anywhere at any time to indicate we have to update it. So inventory slots set dirty. It accepts no additional arguments, and then we have to go to the menu.cpp file to write out its definition or implementation. So in here, we're going to be doing the on inventory update call that we've been meaning to do. Menu, let me go back real quick. It was on, or inventory slots updated. There we go. So this is when we call inventory slots update. Well, no, that's not necessarily true, right? Okay, so now that we set dirty, we like call this function. This is going to trigger some kind of flag internally. It's going to be private. Nothing can access it except itself. So this is going to be a static boolean that indicates that inventory slots are dirty. By default, it will be set to false and will be set to true via that function. So now we go in here, and this is a static function, so naturally it has direct access to its static variables, and we're going to set it to true when we call this function. So now we're going to add the functionality for what happens when this occurs. Essentially, if we call this at any point in time, we're not going to do this right away. We're just, whatever items we're adding or removing, the inventory state in the game is changing, but the UI is not going to reflect that until the next tick. How do we know when it's the next tick? We have an update function, and the update function, this is static. Or is it static? No, this is per menu. Okay, hold on. Is there an internal update function we can use? This is going to be per menu. So I'm not a big fan of that, only because we have to find something that will update all the menus internally. Perhaps there's like an underscore update function or something. So typically I would have something like that. Let's see how the game updates all the menus. Like, what do we use? So let's look for, like, menu. There's initialize menus. There's open menu. Clean up all menus. Render menu. Okay. So it looks like I just do all the rendering right in here, and then I iterate through them all and call their update functions at the same time. I don't know if I necessarily like that, but that's okay. Render menu is essentially the update function for the menus. So we can go ahead and add in if menu, and this is also interesting because I didn't think about this, but right here we're checking if we have a menu stack. So if there's no menu currently open, we don't even bother setting the dirty flag, which is fascinating because that just means that we don't even have to update a menu until we know a menu even exists in the first place. And I kind of like that, I'll be completely honest. So we have the inventory slots dirty flag, and if that is true, we're going to iterate through every category. And for each of these, let's make it const. And we have a category list under item. Get item categories. We're just going to call the on slots update function, or whatever that is, on slots updated, inventory slots updated. Yes, and it accepts the category, so we're just gonna do every category like so. And then we have to set slots dirty back to false. Hi, Plasticky. Yeah, it's your little man. Woohoo! Dun 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 dun. Dun 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 dun. But yes, welcome to the stream. Good to see you. Hope you're doing well. So inventory slots dirty is going to be set to false after this. After all the inventory menus have been updated, so that's good. Pretty hair clips, oh thank you. Alright. So yeah, that should pretty much cover it and perform, or we should expect the same kind of performance as we did before. So I'm going to go ahead and let this build in debug mode, and we'll see how that goes. It's going to take a minute. But yes. Hope coding goes well. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. I hope it goes well as well, of course. That'd be great. Oh, this thing popped up over here. Cool. I don't need that right now. Yeah, just waiting for it to build. It takes a minute, of course. Oh, it failed. What happened? Inventory slot's dirty. Oh, we have to initialize it. I could do it inline here. Or I initialize it in menu. You know, I've been thinking, like, inline technically isn't that bad. At least for something like this. I'm just trying to think, what are the implications of us inlining something like this? I don't feel like there's anything bad that comes out of this. Yeah. Why not just make it... Why not just inline it? Because it's not like I'm going to be defining this anywhere else. As long as you only have one, like, definition of it defined in one place, which we do in this case, it doesn't really affect it. Because it's going to... Inline will choose one of the following defined options to initialize with. At least that's my understanding of it. Like, for example, let's go in our example real quick, and let's take a look at this. I've been experimenting with this a little more, and I'm like, I just want to have a refined internal understanding of how this works, right? So in here, this is our example project. Let's just say we're going to define variables in 2 places, right? Like by doing like inline static int my number. And because I did it inline, I can make it, or I can declare it here. Let's put in a class, actually. This is a more realistic example of what I'm trying to test, right? And then let's say we define that somewhere else, right? Like, if we have multiples of these, which one would it actually use? That's the next question. So, all right, excuse me, I didn't mean to, hello? Oh, we're not trying to do unit testing there, but let's go into another compilation unit. Let's say we're including, I guess, is this included? I guess it is, yes. So let's say we include this as well, and we're just gonna define, I guess, something like this, right? Do I have my example class? Yes. So let me just include it real quick in like, I need a header file because this is a CPP file. Let's say we had a header file and we included that too. So here's a test.h, that would work. But yeah, let's say we do something like this and we included that in here. I would need to somehow indicate that example exists though. That's the problem, is we don't have a way to indicate that early. But technically, if I could, I would put it like this, right? Because that's static too. So defining that would be what I'm interested in. Like, would it know that exists? I don't know if that would know it exists, or if it'll just complain again. Example is not a class or namespace name. Yeah, it has to know in advance that that exists. Can I forward declare it at least? And then I can like define that number that way? Because then it will be static, right? In theory. Use of undefined type example. I would have to make it like global. Like, usually when we do something like this, it's like a global variable, right? Like we have my num here, which I'm going to say is 4. And then we have my num here, which let's say is 7. It's like, what's my num going to be in this case? Who knows? Nobody knows, right? It just depends whatever compiler decides. We don't really get a choice. Static? Static. Wait, does this not work? I thought this worked. I must be thinking of something else. Maybe it's because it's inlined. I'll have to experiment that with more eventually. Anyway, let's go back to here. It looks like the build succeeded, so let's go ahead and run it. I just wanted to update this because I feel like this was the overall picture we wanted. Oh yeah, I'm in unit testing, aren't I? Yeah. Okay, let's get out of that. Go back here. Let's do it again. And should be happy. What do you mean? Unspecified error? What do you mean unspecified error? Project setup, we're on debug. I don't understand. I'm gonna restart Visual Studio. I think you're confused. Also, where's my phone? All right. Please work. Okay. Run again. All right. I don't know why the unspecified error thing was happening, but we're good now. Okay, so what we should expect is pretty much the same speed that we were seeing when we were doing, when we first implemented that inventory optimization code. So we should expect pretty much the same thing now. I think the only thing that's going to change now is the unit testing not working. Oh god, we have some pre-caching going on? Right, okay. Anyway, go ahead and load game and hit this. And we can see it's still quick, right? And my guess is now, yeah, this still occurs, like the inventory updates still happen, but now it's deferred by a tick. Same with saving the game. It's like, yes, eventually we can actually see there that when I clicked, that's when the game froze, because that's when the UIs were updating. And it only took a moment, because it's only doing it one time. So all the item loading now gets deferred, and you can see here once again the same thing occurs. When I load in, right after I load in, there was that small little like black screen, and that was because a menu was popping up. So it's like, okay, now I'm going to update the inventories. That was when the dirty flag was getting called. So you can see here, when I reach the main menu, there's no menu yet until I either click or wait for this logo animation to finish. So if we just wait for it, we're going to see the game actually will pause for a moment as it updates. Yeah, that's when it does the inventory clearing, because the dirty flag has been set at this point and there was a GUI element to update. So that is now working. The only thing that's going to break now is our unit test, because our unit test expects that after we've done that, the UI is updated. So that unit test is actually going to fail now. So I'm going to go ahead and go down here real quick to our unit testing, and I'm going to just demonstrate that that is the case. So let's go to our item tests file, and we can see here, these are all the UI update tests. And we can find them in here as well. And I'm specifically going to run those because I already know that some of these might fail. So I'm going to go ahead and hit debug here. I'm going to let it, I think it's going to have to potentially rebuild, and then we'll pretty much be ready for that. So yeah, I'm glad it's really that simple. Didn't require much. And yeah, we're pretty much ready to go from there. So after this, we'll be back to the monster spellcasting system today, as I promised. This week is mostly going to be focused on the rest of the Chapter 4 monsters, because that's, after we've done some optimizations, I'm really happy where the game is at loading time-wise. It is much faster than before. I can get a lot more done in little time, so I'm really happy about that. One important thing about working on or building my game, or just any project in general, is you want that fast iteration time. You want to be able to try something out quick and then see if you need to update it or change it. And we can't do that if we have like long loading times. Obviously we have long compile times that we can't do as much about, but luckily if we don't have to change much of the internals about our game, then we don't typically have to worry about that too much. So yeah. Yes. Is my thing hiding? Anyway. So we can see these two fail. This one's okay though. Okay, interesting. I wonder why this one succeeded. It says UI does not update when saving file flag is enabled. UI does not update. Okay, so let's see here. We have to basically test. Does this even apply anymore? It does not update when saving flag. So yes, this is like, okay, if we save it immediately or if we add an item immediately, does the UI not update? That's what we want to check. But for these two, we actually need to wait a game tick for the game to re-render the UIs. So after we've done this, we're going to call game on user update, or is it test on user update? Let me see. It might just be test. No, I think it's game. It's like update. Yes. So we're just gonna call game update. We don't have to have any like time pass. We just need to wait or force the game to say, hey, one frame of the game has passed. Can you update the UI for me, please? So we're gonna have those tests run again. And those should be good. I expect that all the other tests are good, but we'll double check before, you know, we actually do a merge with the master branch. So let's have a look. So the tests still fail. UI component count inventory window does not match player item inventory count. So my guess is maybe the update does not do the rendering code, which, I mean, it makes sense. Yeah, we have it blocked off. So unfortunately, render menu, which has the update code for menu, ironically, is in here. So two ideas. We either move this into, well, where would we move it to? Where is all the other menu update stuff? Do we have global game updates? Maybe we do it in here? Let's see. So we have like notifications, audio engine. Like, it's weird that the menu itself does not have an update function, right? Maybe it's time we added something like that, just to keep the drawing separated from the logic. So yeah, maybe it's time to move this and finally have a menu update, because there's an update function for every single menu as well, which is interesting. So my guess is we're probably going to want to do this all in menu update and make a menu update function. So let's do that. We're going to refactor a little bit here because I like that better rather than having everything in draw when it's not really drawing. It doesn't really make sense, right? So we already have a local update per menu, but let's add a static menu update function. I don't even know if you can have this. I think we're gonna have to call it like underscore update, because if we just call it update like this one, then we're gonna end up with two functions named the same thing, and I'm pretty sure that's not allowed. One is static and one is not. This is essentially or effectively a redefinition. Because how are you gonna actually define this, right? There's nothing to differentiate between these two function names, the symbols. So it's not going to end up compiling. So instead, we need to give it a unique name that the compiler will like. And then, if we go to menu.cpp, in here is where we will actually do the implementation for it. And we're moving all that code we just had into here. So, again, bringing all this over into here, which is kind of nice because it also reduces some of the some of the stuff that the game was responsible for. Just makes it a little cleaner over there. We can remove these menu prefixes now that we're in menu itself, because those were all static. And finally, we have these two functions. So this is interesting. These are from the game class itself. So we're going to add those back in like that. And then we have this. So we have to pass in the game instance as well, the game pointer, which we received from here as an argument. So that's fine. So doing all this essentially is the same exact code. Now we can go back to our update function, on user update. And in here, under this, we're going to add in the new menu update function inside of here and pass in along this. And that should be it. And if we want to go one step further, I think include game is already part of this, so we don't even need the game pointer inside of this particular function. We can just remove that completely. It should be unnecessary, which means we can get rid of that. And everything should be happy now, including the unit tests. So we're going to go back to our unit test now, and we should try running that one more time, because that's all we should have to do. Since now we actually update the UI in between updates, what does that imply for everything else? Who knows? Maybe we break something else by allowing that, but I don't think we do. Just looking at what we have, it's pretty small, right? Like, can we imagine that any of these would actually break anything? Now, each update function for each menu, potentially, but the only real things we care about when it comes to updating menus in a unit test are maybe the player interactions, and I don't think that's going to mess things up. So, and I don't know what menu clicks deactivated will actually do. It looks like during loading screen and during fade-ins and fade-outs, which makes sense. So we might even make it so testing mode does not allow for clicks, but who knows? We'll have to see. So far, though, everything seems okay. Debug assertion failed. Back called on an empty vector. Really? Let's see. That will be under... Can I get my stack trace, please? My call stack? This isn't enough information. I just have names of random numbers. Random pointers. Okay. Stack.back. Oh, so we have to actually check... Oh, I see what's going on. If we look in render menu, I forgot the outer layer. The outer layer checks if the menu stack size is greater than 0. So I did miss that. We don't do any of this if there's no menu open, of course. So that's just an oopsie. This work? Ooh, okay. Sorry, I'm trying to I'm trying to move some windows around real quick. So I apologize that I'm trying to rearrange stuff. Cannot start unit testing? Am I not on the unit testing project? Hello? Debug. Considering I have no clue what is going on, YouTube algorithm blessed me with this. I commend how verbal you are. This is quite entertaining. Oh, thank you. Yeah. Well, I'm glad you found me. I typically like to just talk about my coding processes as I work on my game. I have a rather complex project, so it's typically pretty hard to follow unless you've been following it for a very long time. But at the very least, what I like to do is talk about programming processes and thoughts and what I'm going through as a way to kind of give ideas for like, okay, if you're a programmer, what do you typically have to think about? What goes into the problem solving process as a whole? I think that is a very useful thing for people to see. Okay, so let's look one more time because I did get results again, but they were wrong. So unit tests are expecting and nothing is being updated still. So somehow this game update call is not actually triggering those menu updates. So we're gonna have to look at that real quick. Let's see, we do add item and that should trigger like a UI dirty flag, which then we call game update, which is technically supposed to run a game tick. So what I'm probably going to do is we're probably going to debug this line by line, make sure we are hitting this, like what we're expecting. So I'll debug this test in particular. But yeah, I'm glad you're enjoying it. A lot of folks like to say it almost sounds like I'm trying to explain my process like in an interview, which I think was a very good point when somebody pointed that out to me. I'm like, oh yeah, if you're like doing some kind of like coding interview and you need to explain what you're thinking of as you're doing it, this is likely the way you're going to end up doing it. It's like you're going to try to explain what you're going through step by step, what your thinking process is, why you might use something over another, or if you're trying to find a bug like this, what you think is wrong, what you implemented might be wrong, etc., right? So the thing we're interested in is in here, and we're expecting the dirty flag to be true right now, which it is. So we should also expect that. Oh, there's no menu. Okay, so there's no menu open right now, so that's not gonna work. So are we gonna argue now that the dirty flag has no correlation with a menu being open? Because I don't want to have to open a menu just to trigger that. I think that's a little silly. But in game, it's like, I don't know. That's an interesting idea. It's like, okay, so on the next frame of, let's say we add 300 items to our inventory, do we want to just update the UIs at that point? I guess that's okay. Like, when we do it doesn't really matter, but we do have to do it. So, for the sake of simplicity, I think this is the way to go. So that was the reason why they weren't updating, even though we had set the flag, is that we have no menu open in our unit tests, so I would have to open one just to trigger them. So I like that. I'm gonna go ahead and I'll actually run all the item tests now. I'm expecting all these to pass. So, yeah. It also says I disconnected. That's weird. Are we okay? It looks like I'm transmitting data. Maybe that was very temporary? Yeah, but it looks okay. I don't know what happened there. Interesting. Alright, continuing. So, inventory dirty flag. System implemented. We'll say the UI dirty flag. Because when I was thinking about the bigger picture, like, even though I implement something in the game, like, I'm always thinking about my project off stream, right? And then I'm like, you know, after thinking about it, bigger picture, what we really want is to mark the inventory as dirty. We were just doing it along two variables. Speaking of those variables, one of them, the reset game one, is no longer required because that was the only use for it. So I can go ahead and delete that now. Let me go back to the reset game function, and maybe it'll be useful for something else eventually, but right now, this is the only use for this thing. There is another use for the saving file flag, but I'm gonna go ahead and take these out because we created this specifically for this purpose, and we can remove it now because we don't need it anymore. Just as a bonus. Okay, go ahead and add everything to be staged. Inventory UI dirty flag system implemented. And yeah, this was like the bigger picture we really wanted overall. And so this is release build 12821. I'm gonna go ahead and commit, no typos. Push that to remote. And we'll wait for the CI to do a Linux build of it. I personally have it always run a Linux build to make sure it does build for other operating systems. And it also does it from Scriptin, so it's nice to see that. And once that's ready, we can do our little PR here. Did this not finish last time? I guess it didn't. So, this PR was from last time. Oh yeah, I was talking about this. So somehow, the last time we tried to build this, it did fail. So I wanted to take a look at that while this is building. And I think it was Scriptin related, which is why we have this in the first place. If it can't build from Scriptin, then something's wrong. So looking at the output here, it says error, no matching function for call to mscriptin idb async load on line 463 of savefile.cpp. So if we go to save file real quick, let's have a quick look at line 463. It is in here. This is an if-def because it's supposed to be only for mscriptin. So if I make it if-ndef real quick, I can at least get IntelliSense to point out any big typos if there are any. And we'll immediately notice this is gone. We removed that very recently. So we're going to remove it again and replace it with just the set quit allowed as true. And then we see that we actually have a red underscore here because this is an mscriptin function. You have to include the mscriptin header for it. And we don't have that. We also don't have this anymore. So I get to remove that. And for the most part, it looks like this is okay, minus the fact that we don't actually have the definition for this. So let me see what it was complaining about now that we're looking at this. So it says known candidate function is not viable. No known conversion from lambda to emidb onload function. It's a void function with a void star int as arguments. So void function, we don't do anything with it. Void star int. I mean, that looks correct. If we really wanted to, we can be explicit about the void return type, but that should match in theory. That function pointer should match up. I hope it does, but clearly I had to remove those things to get to compile from Scriptin, so I'm actually going to recommit this and have it build again, and then we're going to see if that actually works later. So, remove old, or remove the removed, save functions from previous commit. Really what I could do is amend the previous commit, which I mean I'm kind of merging things together with this under the same thing, but I usually like to do every commit individually, be a little more explicit. So that's gonna force the CI here to start again, and it just pauses the other one it was working on, and that's going to hopefully let us do a merge commit when check succeeds. So I'm just gonna let it do that, and hopefully it does succeed. So we'll be back here in a minute to see what happens. In the meantime, I will also run the other tests that were not done, just to make sure we haven't broke anything. I think now's a good time since we have to wait for stuff to happen anyway, right? So we're just gonna let all that go for a minute, and then hopefully we end up with everything being super happy. But yeah, happy Monday, everybody. Yes, it is Monday. And today I get to look forward to doing some actual gameplay stuff again with the spellcasting system. Because we haven't been able to work on that for a minute due to optimizing a bunch of code. Sorry, I need to type all this out real quick. Okay. So you have CI that just builds it locally. This is on my remote server, so I do have a little Linux box that I run. I just have a remote in case I have to like publish anything to the web sometimes. So this is hosting a Git instance, and Git is just a remote repo you can set up to host your stuff, like GitHub. It's just run by myself. So yeah, there's like some documentation for Git to let you set up your own runners. It runs in like a Docker container, the runner itself. It just basically, this is all in a container, right? It just grabs whatever it needs and then it starts compiling. So that all got configured some months ago and it just does its thing. But basically the requirement was I wanted it to try build a web build successfully, standalone, whenever I committed. And this would be my like validation to make sure, hey, is this code compatible with, in this case, Clang. Oh, there's a version of Clang that it uses, but yes. I don't know exactly what it builds against, but yeah. That's what it essentially does. And then over here, I just have a Microsoft Visual CPP testing framework that I write all my tests in, and it's just integrated into Visual Studio. So it's like any testing framework. You write some asserts for it, and then it just tests them. Essentially, I compile my game into one big DLL, and then that's where it gets all of its definitions from for the testing. Prescott, thank you for the follow. Welcome to the stream. Yeah. Good to have you here. Good to have everybody here. Hope everybody's having a happy Monday. It's the beginning of a new week. For me, that means more game development. Yay. But yes, it's gonna be fun. Fun. Today I'm gonna hopefully finish the spellcasting system. But we spent 2 weeks, essentially 2 weeks, doing optimizations. Because apparently my item loading code was horrific, and my map loading for larger maps would take forever. So we realized this and spent 2 weeks like doing some optimizations, which is nice, of course. And so now we're at a point where we can work more on gameplay. I'm hoping I can get all of Chapter 4 stuff done by, what is it? It's March now? I want to say by week 3 of March, so let's say like the 22nd. We want to be pretty much done with the Chapter 4 monsters and bosses. Usually it takes me a week to do all the little monsters, and then it takes me 2 weeks to do all the 2 bosses. There are 2 bosses per chapter, so that's kind of where we're at with that. And so hopefully we can make that work. I would really like that. That would be very fun. So yes, hopefully you all are doing well. Just gotta wait now. This takes about, I think, 6 minutes to build is usually what we're expecting, so I'm hoping that gets done soon. We can take a look at some spellcasting code while we're waiting, though. So I wrote this monster ability class. I don't even think it's a class. I think it's just a source file. There's just a static function in it, so really it's not much right now, but who knows, we might add more to it. But the whole idea was we have these lambdas defined specifically in here for monsters to spellcast, and we added some functions that were related to that. So we have perform spell, which activates whatever lambda of spell that monster was trying to perform. So we even have like a casting effect now, so we have quite a few things implemented, but we just have to kind of finish it off. In my notes, my to-do, one of the things we can first look at is the Blizzard blue area circle should remain during the duration of the attack. So apparently it doesn't even pop up right now. So I'm just going to take a quick peek and see if I can... We looked at this yesterday, just really quick. This is the Blizzard class, and when it appears, it's supposed to draw a circle. So we have like this is the image we're sending. It's called aiming target.png. And that is supposed to be what actually appears for drawing. It looks like it does radius times 2 multiplied by VF2D11. And that's supposed to be, I guess, the size? Yes. So we should be expecting an image appearing like that. Now, I have a theory. Maybe it's because it's like a background image that it's not showing up. But I doubt that, because either way, we would have seen something. Just checking up on those unit tests, and checking up on this guy. Hopefully it's almost done. It hasn't stopped building, so it looks like the build has been successful thus far. So that's good news. Oh, there we go. Done. So now we have the merge. So this pull request is now closed, which means I can go ahead and delete this remote branch. Excellent. So that's another one out of the way. We also have some minor issues we have to work on later. I talked to my game designer a little bit about the start button thing for the overworld map, and he agrees that we should move the level start to the start button, because naturally when you're on the overworld map, hitting the start button, you're like, oh, I'm gonna go into that stage. What do you naturally hit as a player? Start. So we are going to do that, but he also recommended for the pause menu to put on the top face button of a controller. I thought that was a good idea. It made sense. Apparently Final Fantasy does something like that, so I could see that working for this too. I love your hair, Amy! Hi, Diamond! Welcome! Thank you! Yeah, it's a Neapolitan. It's really cute. Thank you, and welcome! Good to see you. Thank you. But yeah. Let's take a look at... Okay, now I lost my train of thought. So we're good here. This PR is good. We can go in and switch branches. It's wrong. I want to wait for these unit tests to finish. I at least need to know. Are we still good, right? I think that's very important. I don't know what unit test it's actually on. It's like, oh, we're down here. Alright, but so far everything's passed, so I think we're gonna be okay. Yeah, good to see you too, thank you. Alright. So we do call effect draw, and we do pass the blend color in. We do have additive blending on. I'm suspecting that everything's working right. Like, I don't see anything that doesn't look right here. So I'm just gonna take a look at how the scaling works real quick. It looks like it just does size divided by 2, which makes sense because that would be the radius. So I don't think I'm doing anything wrong here, I'll be honest. Yeah, everything looks good. And I know we have to implement a freeze ground ability, so maybe we'll look at that in the meantime. But we have to go to another branch, and I really don't want to stop this build. We're almost there. Like, I really would like this unit testing to finish, just have that confidence that, hey, we're good to go. Then we go from there. I don't know why this is in my get changes. Nothing changed. Right? Undo, redo. Apparently I deleted a comma and put it back. Amazing. Okay. Ooh. Alright. I forgot I didn't run the item tests again, but we don't have to, so every test passed. Good. I'm happy. Alright, so let's go and to the Skeleton Fire Mage branch. That's where we're doing all the magic stuff. We're going to discard these changes, and we have a stash that we had earlier that we're going to restore. So we're just going to pop this and restore. Operation is not valid. What? Pop. restore. I didn't read that. I just... Due to the current state. Okay, there's probably something modified that we have to fix. So usually when this happens, I like to just pull up the actual terminal and we'll just do a git pull, because that will literally tell us what is the current state of our repo. So that was a git pull. Okay, so I'm gonna do git stash pop, and there's a conflict. Both modified version.h, that's fine. Let me see, does it pop up here is the question. Okay, so for some reason it didn't do it manually, but yeah. Let's let's view them. We want the latest, whatever we were last working on, right? So we're gonna take that one, we're gonna accept merge, and then we should be able to continue with the stash. Was that it? The stash entry is kept in case you need it again. Get stash pop. Both are modified. No changes added to commit. I guess I have to commit it first, and then it will work out. There are no unstaged changes. I guess that means we're just up to date. I don't have to actually do anything, which I guess was misleading that I stashed things. Anyways, I'm now going to pull on master. Let me just do a sync on it. At least I should do. Do I have to actually check it out? I think I do. Let's check it out. Let's do a sync. It should grab the latest stuff. So that was the merge pull request we did earlier. And then we're going to bring that back into Skeleton Fire Mage. So merge master into Skeleton Fire Mage, in case there was something else we didn't get from it. And it looks like you happily did that, so we're up to date. We're working with the latest and the greatest. CRLF while compiling on Linux. I think there was one thing we ran into, mostly with the file parsing. But yes, we managed to pretty much avoid that. Git is supposed to internally also make sure it converts between the two. So the magic of Git is supposed to make it so you don't have to deal with CRLF versus just, I think Windows is just a carriage return. I forget. One of the two. But yeah. It's a good point to bring up, and we did run into issues with it for very specific things. It's pretty funny. So, I guess we're gonna show off what problem we're running into. So let me go ahead and do this. I'm also gonna have to get the pack key again, I believe. Let me just confirm that. Ooh, pack key is still intact. Okay, I like that. I thought I had to re-get it. It's just a key we use for packing the game assets because we have some commercial assets, so we have a key to like encrypt it essentially. So if that's not there, then the game just doesn't load. Anyway, we're gonna do a full compile, and then we're gonna look at that blizzard effect. So blizzard blue area circle should remain. I think the snow particle fade away thing we decided we're not doing. And then we have to add comments to the effect child update and draw declarations. So I was thinking about this. I'm still a little bit annoyed that this is a thing, but I'll show what I mean real quick. If we go to effect dot, I believe H, we have a bunch of definitions, as you might expect, for all sorts of effects. I kind of threw them all in here. And the thing we realized was that these update and draw functions, while they are overrides, they also expect you to call the parent function. So I ended up writing a note here that says, in most cases, call effect update in your overwritten function. So I wanted to just go through and add that comment to all these. In case I have to add more of these in the future, That way I just know that this is a thing. Because apparently that is a thing. And it took me like a little bit of time. Operation cannot be completed. Unspecified error again? It seems like this has been happening more and more. Like when I switch back, it's failing to switch the actual like target. Come on, Visual Studio. So I have to like actually restart the program. And then when I run it, it's perfectly fine. Or it just has to rebuild everything again. Okay. Oh, it's because I modified this header, that's why. Well, modified, I added comments, which is enough to trigger it. Oh well. So, yeah. Anyways, this is why compile times are terrible, though. It's because there's so many header files to bring together, and modifying any single one definitely affects a lot of things. But yeah, like if we even look here at the structure of our effect class, one of them has an underscore draw function. The other one does not have an underscore update function. So one of these is not like the other. Bess K asks, what's your game about? So this is an action adventure role-playing game. It's just a little like, almost like a hack and slash kinda. And essentially you are an adventurer in the world of Lestoria, and you just have to figure out why everything is trying to kill everyone. You know, it's very typical, like, kinda good guys versus bad guys situation. And you play as the protagonist. It's very like fantasy coded as well. I was gonna say medieval, but actually not super medieval. Anyways, let's take a look at that blizzard effect. So I think I purposely made it so this monster can only cast blizzard right now. Yes. So it will do that once I let it cast something. Oh, it's so nice to be able to click that file and not wait 10 years for it to load. I can't tell you how much nicer that is. It's like at the same time, nobody should expect that a monster or loading 300 items should take that long. And it's also nice that this map, which is a very large map by the way, takes a much shorter amount of time than before. That loading time used to be awful, so the optimizations do show through now. So when this spawns, I don't believe the blue targeting circle, it either doesn't stay or it doesn't appear. Yeah, so we should expect a blue little like circle here when that happens. So, and what is responsible for that is this itself. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to breakpoint right here. I think this is valid. This is during the call of the constructor when it's created. And I'm pretty sure we can then take a look at what the variables are at this point in time, because I'm pretty sure that's what we need for it to be relevant. But what essentially happens is this monster has a certain amount of mana, and when it has enough mana, it will try to cast from its pool of abilities. And so we can see the radius here is AT4, so this is going to return in the function as 168 after calculations, which is about what we would expect. So I don't think that's the issue. So the next thing I'm going to look at is what actually happens in this draw function. So I'm going to go ahead and hit continue. And now we're down here. The blend color is... that's fine. It's like blue, but it also has some alpha, which I presume should be okay. It's not in the air, so it goes down here. And I guess the position is also what we're concerned about. So position looks okay. I mean, That's probably what we would expect. I assume the player is somewhere around there too. If I just look at the player real quick, its position is like 542, 4873. So it's close enough as well. Yeah, I don't see anything wrong with it not being there. Now, is the color okay? I mean, the color looks okay. Size. Size is 168 by 168. So I don't expect that to be an issue either. Okay. But we clearly don't see, like, I'm expecting a little circle or whatever. The aiming target. .png. That's what we should be expecting. So something's not right. Let me take another look at these parameters. Rotation, rotation speed, additive blending. I don't think it can be the additive blending. At least I doubt it. We do have a fade out timer. And a lifetime. Is the lifetime getting messed up potentially? I doubt it. Because this update function keeps running, so we know that its lifetime continues to remain. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to first turn off the blending. I just want to see what happens if we do that. Because I want to say it's not the color. The color itself shouldn't matter. I don't think it's the radius. Like, the size looks good. I'm trying to think maybe there might be another way we can get it to appear. Maybe try a different image, right? Like, aiming target itself should be a pretty fine image to use and should exist. I don't think it doesn't. Like, it's like, this is aiming target. It looks fine. AI actions. AI actions? What is all this? When did you get in my right-click menu? I wonder if I can remove that. I'm like, why? Thanks Windows for adding Ask Copilot and AI actions to my right-click menu. Because I really wanted those. What else did it add? Alright, anyway. Yep, it's there, looks fine to me. And we know it's being called because we did go in here. We even drilled all the way down to the draw itself. So we know it's not that. So I'm gonna see if it's the additive blending. Maybe it is. I also had a hunch that maybe it's because it's a background effect. But I doubt that. Like, we've had other background effects, but they appear over the ground. In theory. So I'm pretty sure we're fine there. I can't think of really anything else that would be wrong. I'm just so happy we don't... Like, this is debug mode, so naturally things are going to be slow. I'm just glad it's not, like, ridiculously painfully slow anymore. Because we used to... It used to be undebuggable in debug mode. Which is absolutely... insane. Okay. Yeah, so what are we gonna do here? Yeah, there's just nothing here. Like, no image showing up at all. I wonder why. Let me see about... Okay, so... Let's go to monster ability real quick. And let's say... Let's just have a look here, right? Maybe one of these, like, doesn't translate right? I don't know. We have a min scale, max scale. I wonder if that messes with it. Because that potentially could. Anyway, let's have it generate one more when it gets done here. Please do it again. But yeah, these particles that just kind of stay for a minute, I'm okay with that. That's not really a big deal. Okay, so what should we look for here? Well, we know all these are going to translate into something passed into here, right? So I guess snow, no. There's not really much here that can go wrong, if I'm being completely honest. Position passed in, fine. Radius is fine. Lifetime is 5 seconds. That should be fine. Damage is 20. Tick rate is 1. Like, everything seems to be okay. Non-friendly. Alright. Well, how about this? Let's jump back a level then. Let's say... So is this a background effect? Let's see. Let's find out. You know what's weird? Every time I do this, I end up with 2. I wonder why. Like, I press continue, and then I end up with a second hit of this. I wonder if it's creating 2. And if it is... Oh, so this is not a background effect. Okay. Well... According to this... The lifetime is infinite? Is that right? This is a... Oh, this is a fall effect. So this is the snow. These are all like the snow effects being added. So I need to go like back. This is when we call snow emit. So I have to go back to here, and when blizzard is created, then we hit this. And so this is not a background effect either. So it should be added at this point. And it's got a lifetime of 5. So I'm expecting that everything's okay so far. Yeah. Like, clearly the effect's there, it's just not visually there. This is strange. And we see the aiming target before, right? What if we just... I guess we can go look at effect rendering. So let's go here, because currently it's being drawn. And let's just jump out 1 in the call stack to underscore draw. We can jump out 1 more to render world. Is there anything other than here that would cause us not to draw it? Right? Because, I mean... Everything checks out. This is the right effect. Unless there are tiles being drawn above it, which I don't think that's the case. Okay, I have another idea. What if this function's not working? I'm just gonna try something out of the blue. Instead of calling that function, I'm just going to call this function. I just want to see what happens. Pause. We'll just do it at pause. I just want to see it. Right? We grab its decal. Scale we can leave. And maybe in the worst case scenario, right? Even draw like a rectangle. This would actually be a good debug mode feature to have. Something that like just draws either outlines or actual like fills of what's supposed to be there, right? That's actually not a bad debug thing to actually have. So like where the image is supposed to be, we should be able to draw something that goes there. So like the size we calculated as, I think it's this one? No, that's the center. The center of the image? Yeah, that makes sense, because that's source divided by 2. Source size is right here. You know what's weird? It's considered an animation. I hope that's not messing with it. I don't think so. But yeah, it's like everything's considered an animation, even if it's only got one frame. Color's white. I'm just gonna leave it as that for now. So let's see what happens, right? This will very likely make effects look weird, but I want to see if anything appears in general. Because if nothing's appearing with all three of these draw calls, but why would this suddenly not work, right? That's the next question. Is there's nothing that would cause that to occur. And we're clearly seeing the snow effects. Like, the snow does use this code too. So the snow's working fine. Let's see. I should have an ability with that effect. I just want to see what happens. Okay, so I saw little, like, rectangles. They are... I don't have anything else that produces, like, particles, I don't think, so... Let me see here. But yeah, like, each of those little beams is, like, its own little effect image, so that would make sense. So... well, we saw it there. Also, I can get rid of this breakpoint. So that draws, interestingly enough. So it's just not drawing the actual image itself for whatever reason. Okay, well, I mean, that's kind of promising, right? That's something, at least. Okay. So why isn't this being drawn? Hold on. Let's specifically get the blizzard, right? There we go. Okay. Alright, so... I don't know what else would break here. Rotation's fine. That should hopefully be fine. Let's see if we can evaluate all these parameters. I'm just gonna go into this function, because then it would... Oh, that's not what I wanted. I want to go in here. So we'll go in here and let this trigger, so we can just look at all the resulting variables. And just see if we see anything strange. I don't think we would. So... 24 by 24, so that is the correct image. It has a center of 12 by 12, which makes sense. The source position is 0, 0. The source size is 24 by 24. Scale is 168. Does that sound wrong? Like, I don't think the scale is supposed to be... Hold on. I would argue 168 is too big. Are we drawing it too big? Because what's 168 times 24, right? That's massive. And the image is transparent in the middle, right? So that would make sense. If we're not seeing it because it's too big. So I think the scale is supposed to actually be the total size, not the... Alright, let me think about this. Has this been wrong the whole time? So I guess the assumption is the size is the actual pixel size we want to draw, not the scale? So shouldn't I call this scale, not size? I might leave this in as like a debug thing in the future. Let me just comment those out and think about how I want to proceed with those, because that's interesting. Maybe make a little feature for that. So we'll come back to that. But yeah, let me go back to Blizzard now. So we're expecting a scale there. So let me instead do... So we initially passed in like 168 or whatever as the size. Oh, yes, I see that. Because the size by default is 1. What was this, like 84 or something? Yeah, that wouldn't be good, would it? Take this and divide by 24. And that should be our scale. So dividing this VF2D by that scalar should result in it working out. Order of operations does not matter here. I think that'll fix it. So I think it was too big. That's why. I'm like, there's no way effect code has gone this long with it potentially breaking, right? There's just no way. Because all the other effects are working fine. But yeah, seeing that scale, I'm like, that's just wrong. So after this, so it was just technically a misinput, a typo. Probably just didn't realize, didn't catch it. Maybe I was like copying some other effect and didn't see it quick enough. Oh well. Stuff like this happens, but it should be okay now. I don't think there's really much else to the Blizzard effect. It does what it's supposed to do. It does damage for a little while. If anything, I would like that circle tend to pulsating a little bit. That'd be nice. I think that would make it look better. I also expected it to have some kind of background, so I might add that. Maybe instead of using an aiming target, I might use like a circle that I can actually fill out a little bit. So we'll see. I mean, I kind of like that. I don't know why it's off a little bit. It definitely looks off, but I'm not sure why. Or maybe it's on and the snow is off? Visually, it looks correct. So yeah, maybe that's all we have to do. Techie73S, thank you for the follow. Looks like it's a little larger than the circle, which I don't like. I don't think the circle's off though, because the center is actually the center, and it's respecting the radius. So maybe it's just the actual visual versus the what it's detecting is wrong. So for the sake of the player's sanity, I think it would be very fair to make the actual hit radius a little smaller. I usually like to do that. So I'll just take this and make it like, oh, I don't know, 90%? We like to usually give the player a little bit more of a benefit. So 90% the normal radius in terms of the hurt range would be good. Okay. So I'm happy with that. That's the Blizzard effect, which we pretty much already had done. Just a little oopsie there. So let's move on to Freeze Ground. So the description for Freeze Ground, if I could pull it up one more time. I don't know where the document went. Chapter, I think, no. Chapter 4, Monsters. Here it is. So it says it instantly creates a 500 radius frozen area. Decreases player's move speed by 5% every second the player's inside. Stacking up to 8 times. Starting with 4 stacks, the player gets 10 times attack times stacks minus 3 damage per second. Interesting formula. Okay. So if you can have up to 8 stacks, this number can be up to 5. So you would take up to 50% attack damage. So up to 20 damage per second when it stacks up to max. Player loses 1 stack instantly on leaving the area and loses every second another stack. The area stays frozen for 10 seconds. Okay. So I'm thinking in my head, we want to place down some kind of like little blue, light blue circle. And for that, I think I'll just use the... I might be able to use that actually. That looks okay. But let me grab... let me grab a more circular one. What's this? This is a 24 by 24. What looks to be a circle. Is it transparent? I could use something like this. I kind of like that. Maybe I'll texture it a little bit. Which is why I was looking at the other one. Let me see. Yeah, if I can texture it a little bit, that would be great. Let's use this. So let me export as, we'll call this, what? Freeze ground. .png. And if we know the actual size, we could just make it a normal pixel size instead of extremely scaled up. It's supposed to be a 500 radius area, so that's actually really large. That is 10 squares wide. That is very large. So yeah, we're talking pretty massive. 500 radius, so multiply this by 5, we get 120. I mean, having them as squares like this is probably okay. I'm not totally against this. The game is rendered at, I think, 4 times pixel size. Well, actually, it depends on the window size, right? But typically, you're playing the game at 4 times resolution. So it kind of look like this. I guess that's okay. 24 by 24 though. Yeah, like usually when I'm playing, I'm looking at it like this. I think that's fine actually. I want to texture it just a little bit. Let's make it like... If it's gonna be more icy, we probably want like blues. Probably do something like this. I just want to bring in a little bit of color. Although, I guess I want to use 5 by 5 squares. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If I want to match this kinda. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. So, looking at that. See if I can just... I guess in the end, I'm probably just going to, like, blur this or something. I don't think I strictly want to stick to palette here. Let's just try this. I think that's kind of what I'm going for here. And I need it to be way smaller than that. And I guess I want... Hey, oh wait, this is sharpening. Why are we sharpening? I don't know, I feel like the idea is there, but not quite what I'm going for. Alright, what about... I guess maybe I just want an outline. Some kind of like hard outline. I think that would be fine. Let's try a border of 5 with no feathering, please. A border. Alright. Why is it doing that? I have the wrong selection? Oh, I see. I need the inside. And border by 2.5 because it's actually double what it needs to be. So let me see. If I do that, I think I kind of like that. That's more what I was thinking of. Just having something along the edges. Although I don't know if I wanted to have sharp edges. Let me make it a different color. Why is it? Oh, this is all what? Oh, this is all same color. I see. Fill by alpha. There we go. I'm like, don't consider alpha, please. If I use this though, this isn't the full range of the attack. The full range of the attack is 500, which is actually way out here. So I guess I'm gonna cut it down a little bit, which I'm okay with. Alright. I'm just gonna go with this. I think this is okay. I was looking for kind of more blocky thing anyway, so I'm gonna go with that for now, and we'll see how we do. So we need to make an effect called Freeze Ground. And I need to add in some configuration variables for it. So typically our configuration variables are stored in a format like this. It's called the OLC util data file. And in here we're going to be adding just anything we need to basically specify this in case we want to change the parameters later. So let me bring you over here so I can look at the spec real quick. So we need a 500 radius area. So this will be freeze ground radius. It's 500. We have a decrease in player movement speed per second. So freeze ground slowdown rate. So we have a rate and we have a frequency. So the rate is how fast, it'll be 5%. And the frequency is how often. So the frequency is going to be every second. And one nice thing about this format is that you can add extra little symbols after your numbers, and it literally just ignores it. It's just part of the whole spec of letting it be a little more human friendly. It stacks up to 8 times, so we have a max stack amount. Slowdown max. I guess I'll call this max slowdown. Although it needs to be a multiple of the slowdown rate. So really we're saying this is the max slowdown stacks. So this is like the slowdown per stack, I guess is what I'll call it instead. That way it's a little more clear what we're doing here. So we have 8 stacks max. And then we have a certain point where the number of stacks increases the damage. So I see how this works. It says starting with 4 stacks, the amount of damage is this formula. So freeze ground, I'm gonna call this the damage start amount. Freeze ground stack required for damage. Stacks required for damage. We're gonna say 4 stacks are required, and then freeze ground multiplier per stack, attack multiplier, and that's going to be so 10 times attack, so 10% attack per stack. Player loses a stack instantly on leaving the area. So freeze ground stacks loss. Stacks removed immediately on leave. 1. And then you lose another stack every second. So freeze ground stack removal speed or rate. Removal rate is 1 every second. So could we argue, if this is the case, that we set the duration of the... No, because we're removing it stack by stack, so... It's an interesting little mechanic. The area stays frozen for 10 seconds, so finally the freeze ground, I guess, lifetime is 10 seconds. Okay. So I think this is all we're gonna need, configuration-wise. They go in here. So we're gonna need to make a new effect. We'll call it freeze ground. Although it's literally just gonna be something on the ground. It doesn't really need anything special. It's just what we have to add to it is like the damage over time effect. Which means we're gonna have to bring in another effect. I feel like if we can make a class that defines like a damage over time effect for us, that would be nice. But this one's kind of special in that it increments stacks and stuff, so we might want to define a special class for it anyway. Just to keep things simpler, I think I'll be able to implement it faster if I just go for it like this. So we have freeze ground, it's going to need a position, radius, lifetime, damage, tick rate, let's see, what else? What else do we care about? Damage, tick rate. I guess everything else is going to be hard-coded or built in, and whether or not it's friendly or not, upper level, emitter frequency. So what we could do, and what I've considered start doing, is adding in like a struct that defines these parameters for us to make it easier to work with. So for example, we have all these parameters for freeze ground, right? Why not be able to define all these in its own little struct that we just pass along with it? So we can call this like a struct of freeze ground settings. And we put in there all of those settings, right? And that just makes things easier. So this is what the config looks like. And we basically translate these to that and then provide those settings when we define this freeze ground effect. So I think that would be a good way to do it, in my opinion. So this is going to be radius, slowdown per stack, slowdown frequency, max slowdown stacks, stacks required, attack multiplier, stacks removed, stack removal rate, lifetime. Just like something like that would be nice. And I think that more or less covers what we need to pass in, because I've been having trouble figuring out, okay, what do I need to pass in? Do I need to pass in everything? Should I pass in everything? I think it's better to have everything available to us and go from there, like, in my opinion. Oh, we don't need these. We just need, at this point, we just need to put commas in. Oops. Let me do that. There we go. So something like that would be nice. Any of these we don't want. Let's see. Well, oh, these need to be semicolons actually. Oops. That'd be nice. I just tried the demo. It's interesting as potential. Very nice soundtrack. Yeah. Well, I'm glad you liked it. Thank you for the feedback. And yeah, I love the soundtrack as well. We have a musician that is local to where I live, and we met up and decided to collaborate together. So that's awesome. I'm glad you like it. He's very passionate about just making a ton of like random stuff when it comes to music, so I was kind of lucky to meet him. I'm glad you tried it out and enjoyed it though. I appreciate that. Okay, so freeze ground settings, we're going to include that inside of here when we pass everything along, so I don't really need like even the tick rate or the damage, because that's all gonna be included in here. No, the damage isn't. We're gonna need the base damage, so we're gonna say a const freeze ground settings, and just passing those along will make things easier for us, because now we know exactly what settings we have. And the issue I ran into before was, like, let's say we make something for the player to pass in, and we do a freeze ground effect for the player. Well, the player would have to pass in these variables too, but it would have to come from another source. Adding in more and more of these arguments would just make it really messy. So I've started trying to think about, okay, maybe we can do something like this instead. That would be nicer. Do I have to do anything custom for drawing? I don't think so. We're just drawing an image on the screen. So we could probably do that without calling draw. Yeah, like, when I think back to Blizzard as well, like you see here, we just call effect draw. We don't really need to do that. It does that by default, in theory. So we can leave that out, I think. Yeah, because it'll just call this by default. So if we don't have to do anything special, we can get rid of it. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And now, I don't think we need tick timer. Or do we? Actually, I think we do. But tick rate is built into the settings. Damage radius. Radius is built into the settings. So yeah, we should be good. Okay, let's build the class for this now. So we have effects. Add a new class for that. Called it freeze ground. Okay, so freeze ground. Let's include effect.h. Now we're going to define all these things. Okay, so let's first pass along anything the parent class needs. So we pass in position, lifetime, what image we are using. So for freeze ground, we're using that new freeze ground image. It's just freezeground.png. Also, if we define a new image, we have a graphics.txt where we define any graphics we're adding to our game. So typically just throw it at the bottom here. Freeze ground. This is freezeground.png. Simple enough. That way it's added to the list of stuff. And then we just have to delete gamepack.pack and let it compile. So now the image file, we're just going to hardcode it as freezeground.png. I think for now we'll also hardcode the blend color, but we might change that later. We'll see. Let me use the onUpperLevel function in case that modifies it at all. Size. Again, like, size should just be the radius divided by the image size. Yeah, so it should be radius divided by whatever, in this case, the image size is 24 by 24, right? So I should just be able to do, in this case, graphics freezeground.png, which we have to include, by the way. So include GFX. GFX freezeground.png, sprite size. So if we do that, we end up with the scale, which I think we figured out what's the actual size we wanted. It's supposed to be a scale. And then the fade out, let's do half a second. Speed. No speed. No color. Or no, we are going to use a specific bluish color. I guess the same one that we used Blizzard for. We can use that color just fine. Because we basically chose like a light blue color-ish. No rotation speed. We'll set additive blending to true. I think we can set additive blending back for the Blizzard as well, because both Freeze Ground and the Blizzard are like more snowy-ish, so they kind of want the additive blending built in. So on top of this, we have to specify the local variables. Those are damage, tick timer, damage, tick timer starts at 0. We can just initialize that here. And then the friendly type, we can store friendly in here. And finally, the settings. And that should be every variable. So I was complaining earlier that this wasn't properly initialized because those are const. So if you have const member variables, then you must initialize them when the object is constructed. So for the update function, we're now going to write everything we need for this to actually function. So first, we're going to continuously increment the tick timer by elapsed time. That's how much time passes for each frame of the game. When it hits a certain value, so let's look at the spec again. Let's start with the radius part. So if you are in range of it, you the player, then you'll get hit by it. We have a function that damages things based on radius called hurt. We're going to have to include game, the game pointer, to access it. So I think it's called game hurt. We also need to include, yeah, it's an incomplete pointer, which means we have to also include the type itself, which is found in the Adventures in Lestoria header. Okay. And that includes the AIL class, which gives us access to the hurt function. The hurt function lets us define a position and a radius, along with the damage, how much we want to hurt it, whether it's on the upper level or lower level, and a Z, followed by if we're hurting enemies or players. So we specify like the hurt type. And depending on whether this is a friendly bullet or not, determines if we hurt monsters or we hurt players. So in this case, if it's a friendly bullet, it means monsters are supposed to get hurt. And if it's not a friendly bullet, it's players that get hurt. I don't think any hurt flags need to be turned on. Radius is unidentified, so that will come from... Yeah, apparently radius is not stored as an effect thing. It's just the sizes, which doesn't help us. So we have to actually store the radius locally, which is why I guess we did it for the Blizzard as well. So we'll add that to our parameters. Oh, but we did specify the radius. Hold on. I can back up a little because it's in our settings. I forgot about that. So we can go to settings dot radius, and because the radius is in units, we're going to convert that to pixels. So if you divide it by 100 and multiply by 24, we go from a unit convention we made up into pixels. Basically, we said every 24 pixels, or every tile was 100 units. It just made it easier to scale everything down when talking about the spec. I don't think we're supposed to expect anything. Oh, I see. Yeah. I terminated the ternary incorrectly. So that takes care of the damage in a radius. Now, it's not supposed to happen every tick. It's only supposed to happen if the tick timer becomes greater than or equal to the frequency of attack. So if we look in our settings, we have a... Well, I guess this is the same thing. Both the slowdown frequency and the damage. Let me see. Yeah, it's damage per second, but it's also slowdown frequency per second. I assume they're tied together, but maybe I should separate them. Just in case we want to make the slowdown speed and the damage speed be different. I feel like that's a little niche, but it might come into play, who knows. So we have slowdown frequency, and then we have the damage frequency. And then back over here, we're going to use that variable. So damage frequency. Then we are going to subtract. And really this should be a while loop. Because if it so happens that multiple ticks happen in that amount of time, we should perform them both in that frame. So after we do one tick, we subtract by settings.damageFrequency until we've finally gone lower than the actual damage frequency allows. So if for some reason our game, our computer hiccuped for a moment, and 2 seconds passed, well, that should be 2 ticks applied in one go. Now technically that's not true because we force the game to render at least 1/30th of a frame every frame, regardless if your computer can handle it. So the game is forced into a 30 FPS, I guess you can call it time. So you end up with this time dilation if your computer can't keep up. Which is fine in my opinion, that's kind of intended. I don't think the game would perform well if you could suddenly skip a whole bunch of frames at one go. So we kind of forced that limitation. Alright, next is we have a damage frequency, and now the slowdown per stack. So we have to add slowdown stacks to the player if they get hurt. So again, we're looking at a split between friendly or not. So if we're friendly, we're going to be applying... Well, actually, this returns what gets hit. So that's actually what we're interested in. So we're going to take that hurt list and iterate through it. I can do const auto, I think. Maybe I should just do auto. Hurt target in game hurt. And we developed this a while back to make it very easy for us to iterate through anything that got hit. So essentially, this is a hurt list item. I forget what that looks like. It is a standard variant with a monster or a player raw pointer. So since it's a variant, we have to figure out which one it is. So if standard holds alternative monster pointer, then we're going to cast it to that. So we're looking if hurt target is a monster or player. And if it's a monster, we do a certain set of things, and if it's a player, we do another set. I think this is correct. Argument types are const hurt list item. I think we have to do hurt target dot... There it is, first. I don't know what second holds, I didn't double check. It is the... Oh, it's the hurt return value. I guess whether or not they got hurt. So there's a chance they don't get hurt. So let's actually break this up into hurt target and hurt. So if hurt, because there's a chance the attack actually doesn't hurt whatever the target was reached, it just says they were in range. So we can double check that here. It returns, let's see, a hurt list. And let me see what the second value looks like. So her return value is a bool, and the return value goes in there. So yes, the default hurt function returns whether or not the hit actually applied. So we could do this the opposite way just to keep it from being having too many chained braces or brackets. I kind of like this paradigm better, where we say if not hurt, continue. We don't care about anything that didn't get hurt. We only care about stuff that did. So if this one got hurt, then we should be able to cast this. Oh yeah, we split it out from a pair, right? So now it looks like this. So we assume it's a player, and if it's not a player, something went terribly wrong. What else could it possibly be? It's a variant, so it's not supposed to do something terrible. So warning, unknown type, typecast for hurt target. For hurt target. This should not be happening. Whenever we get one of those, we know something terrible occurred. Usually we only hit these, like, impossible paths when, like, we corrupt memory, which is why I do these in the first place. I'm also just going to hint that this is very unlikely. Oops, wrong one. There we go. Okay. So in here, let's say... Well, let's first cast it, of course. So monster M. Let me think. So it's a variant. I think you just directly pull it out. You just say like hurt target dot get. No. Standard get. That doesn't seem right. Standard variant. I'm pretty sure it's standard get for some reason. Maybe I'm thinking like you have to put an index inside of it. Oh, you just put the type. Okay. So that was close. So you put the type in here. Of her target. And that should be it. Cool. So that's the monster. And then we have player in this scenario. And then from here, we can do our stuff. So if we're in here, we're going to first add a buff to the monster. And this is going to be a slowdown buff. And so really what we're doing is we're adding a stacking slowdown buff. So it's supposed to decrease the movement speed by 5% every second, stacking up to 8 times. So until we hit that max stack limit, we keep stacking, and if we hit this max stack limit, I assume we just refresh. So we're actually not going to use add buff, we're going to try edit buff. And this is a pretty powerful function, because it will either return a buff that already exists, or give you a brand new buff on top of it. So I think, let me double check that, so I'm not making stuff up here. Actually, it looks like it doesn't necessarily return everything. Copy if it matches, but what if it has nothing to match? Then it returns a buff index that's blank. I think there's another, I think it's like add or edit buff. It might be add or edit buff. Add. No. I added a function that lets us do this. Let me see. Let's look for it. Maybe it's only under player. You know what? I probably didn't add it under monster on purpose. Probably because it's more advanced. Let me see. Does this have an edit buff? edit buffs. No, same thing. Does it have... Oh, there it is. Get or add buff. Do we have one over here too? Okay, so we don't. I think it would be beneficial to add this here because this is very useful for situations like this. Well, it either returns the buff if it exists, or it makes a new buff if it doesn't exist. I think that's a very useful utility function to have, and I think the monster class should also have this too. Let's go down here to where our buff stuff is, and let's just say add or edit buff. There are a lot of overloads for add buff too, but really we just provide it like this, and I guess that's all we really need. Really what I could do is copy a buff, because these are, well, add buff. I don't know if these use the constructor. It looks like they use custom constructors. Oh yeah. So what if I just provide a constructor to fill that in? I think that makes more sense, and then we just copy it. So const buff ref, a new buff that we just copy into there. I like that. That makes more sense. So add buff, provide the buff. It should be a copy. So we don't even need to do this. We just say, we just return it again, and then we have to do something with it. But it's const. So I don't know if I can do that. It's like, I need to copy it in this function in case I need to use it later on, because it doesn't exist. So we have to do add buff to add it to our list of buffs, and then it'll exist, so we turn a const ref of that. I think that makes more sense. Or return a buff ref of that. Okay. So really we just do... Oh, I don't know why I'm doing this in here, by the way, but that's the idea, right? Is we just create a new buff based on a prior buff. Which makes it... Yeah. Which makes it easy enough to do this without having to add in all the overloads for it, which presumably we use at different points in time. So then we call... Well, we do all this, essentially. And maybe I'll do the same for player, because I feel like copying the buff makes more sense. So if get buffs, buff type, return, edit buff. I really should change this to say buff type instead of buff. So rename buff to buff type in... I only want it in this function, please. Thank you. So get buffs is on... Oh, let me include monster here. Okay. So if get buff size is greater than 0, return an edit version of the buff, otherwise add buff. So instead of calling add buff, we're actually going to do what add buff typically does and do buff list down place back. Some of these have side effects though, as we can see. Are these just checks? Like error messages? That should be okay then. In an ideal world, I would like have all these chained together so that they all end up referencing a really big constructor, and then these are just condensed versions of those constructors with other parameters that don't match up. Like, I would definitely redo this at some point. This is definitely not how I would do this nowadays. I don't know. I guess I did this on purpose, and maybe that's just the way it has to be, right? Fine. I'll just do this for now. It looks like the other way I would need... It would require some complicated stuff. Also, are these not known? They are inside of player.h. I think these need to go into its own place. Something player and enemies share? Buff? So we do have a buff header. Let's put it in there, because that actually makes sense. So I'll just put those in there. And then both of those include them, so now they exist, and this works. Okay, so I'm going to change that out. We're going to go back. And let's see here. So we are going to add buff. New buff first, new buff second, buff type. Initial value of reference to non-const must be an L value. Oh, this doesn't return anything. These should return stuff. Okay, well, let's actually return the buff when we call add buff. So it looks like I haven't done this to the monster class yet, but I should. Ideally, these just return them. So if you return what mplaceback gives you, it gives you the reference to whatever you just added, which is super nice. So I'm going to exchange all these for that. And that'll just be handy so we can actually do stuff with it, and we can chain it with like other things. Just really handy. So then we have to change these to be returns. And then down here, it'll also return it. So I think we're all caught up. So now monsters also have a get or add buff. So we can go back here and we can say get or add buff. And we can fill this out. So this needs a pair of a buff duration and buff intensity. So for duration, under our settings, we have a... Let me pull this up again. Duration is slowdown frequency. So presumably if it's going up by once per second, it also lasts that long? I'm actually not sure about that. It's like, so if it lasts a second, does that mean we'll be back here to apply another one before it runs out if we put a second? I want to say yes. I don't think this ticks before... I don't think buffs tick before effects do. It would depend on the ordering. But maybe this is okay? But if it wears off, right? That's not the intent. So if the damage frequency is lower than the slowdown frequency, you see this is like a loop. We actually need a separate timer specifically to apply slowdown stuff. So it can't just be whatever gets hurt, but also whatever gets slowed down. So that brings me back to the question, are they tied together? Because that would make things a lot more simpler. I think they have to be tied together. I'm pretty sure that was the intent. It wouldn't make sense for the slowdown timer and the damage timer to be separate, right? Because then things would just be out of sync. It wouldn't really make sense to the player. I don't think it would be a good experience overall. So I don't like how they were separated, and I'm undoing that. So here we're removing the damage frequency, and we're just assuming the slowdown frequency and the damage frequency are the same. Because it doesn't make sense that they would be different. So now we have that. And then the second value is supposed to be the... let me see. It just told me. The buff intensity. So depending on what we get here determines what the intensity should be after. But for the new buff, it starts at an intensity of 1. I think that's in settings too. No. Okay, so 1 stack. Or intensity of 1, I guess you can say. Oh wait, no, the slowdown intensity is actually, let me see here. So there's no such thing as like, stacks really? Well, there is, but we can also derive the stack from the intensity. So if we do, freeze ground slowdown per stack, that's the starting intensity. We have to divide by 100 because it's not a percentage. And that's technically the stack amount, but I think, let's say we get this buff here. Slowdown buff. Their buffs do have a stack parameter. I think. Okay, no, they don't. So you would grab the amount of stacks by doing the intensity, and you divide that by the slowdown per stack, divide by 100. And I wouldn't do that. I would do const int stacks is equal to the settings slowdown per stack. Well, it's the current buff's intensity, slowdown buff intensity, divided by this divided by 100. So let's say the slowdown per stack was 5%. If intensity is 0.5, or no, not 0.5, let's use like 0.2, right? And you divide by 5, then you end up with 0.04. And then if you divide that by 100, what do you get? Okay, that's clearly not it. I think you have to multiply by 100. So it would have been 0.04 times 100. 4 stacks. Yeah, that makes more sense, because we're unreverting the percentage. So again, let's say the intensity this time was 0.15. You divide by 5, and then you multiply by 100. That gives you 3 stacks. So that's a way to get the number of stacks, so we can either add or remove. Alternatively, we can just detect it as a raw value and not even worry about the stack number. I think this is just a better way to visualize it, since we have to count based on number of stacks. So I do like that idea. So the max stacks is 8. So our goal is to increment it. If stacks is less than or equal to, well, less than the max stacks, the max slowdown stacks, then we are allowed to increment it. See, now we can work on like a higher level called the stack system versus using these intensities, which can change and it's harder to understand, right? So yeah, we apply another stack if we can, and of course we're going to update the buff afterward. So we do slowdown buff dot, goodness, intensity becomes equal to whatever the slowdown per stack is, multiplied back by the max or the stacks. This is divide by 100 though, to put it back into a percentage. So it would look like that. And the slowdown buff would also have its timer increased. So it's more like this thing has an infinite duration until there's no stacks. But also, if there's a stack system, then we can presume that every time it goes down, something happens. So maybe this is one of those buffs we apply the custom function to. Okay, so here's the idea. This buff needs a custom function per tick, right? So we do have that capability. Slowdown buffs have a player buff callback function or a monster buff callback function, which can be used when they expire. So the idea is we set this buff to expire, but when it expires, if there are more stacks, it actually decrements that value and then stays alive. So that's an idea. Either that or we have something to... Let me see. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. Like, we can regulate it. We have to regulate it outside of this update loop because we're not going to have control of the buff after this. So the idea is the monster buff callback function handles the decrementing when we're outside. Freeze ground stacks removal rate is every second. So if theoretically we make the buff last for 1 second, which we can do. I don't know why there's no lifetime here when we make it, but we need to set that. Let me see. How does it know what its lifetime is? It doesn't. What does it make the lifetime then? Is there a default? What is the default lifetime? Now I'm curious. Default lifetime of a buff. Duration is 1. Time between ticks is 1. Okay, interesting. I mean, there is a duration here, so... Is that why we use... Oh, maybe that's why we use slowdown frequency. That is the duration. Okay, so its lifetime is 1 second. So inside the callback function, it looks like the args are standard weak pointer monster in the buff. So... Standard weak pointer monster. And the buff. So buff, ref, buff. So I think what we can do here is, even though this is the expiring function, we can actually reset the lifetime to bring it back to life. So we can add another 1 second back to this buff when it's about to die. So we're first going to say if this buff's intensity... Oops. Oh, also, when we make this function, we're going to have to copy the settings over, because the lifetime of this effect is not going to be long enough, technically, so the buff might last longer. So we're going to introduce the settings as a copy instead of a... wait, is that right? Freeze ground settings is not a variable? What? It should be? Let me see here. Okay, it looks like I just had to type out the actual variable name. So yeah, we're gonna be adding settings. I feel like you can do this... I'm pretty sure that's what this is supposed to mean. But apparently not. I feel like that's what that's supposed to mean in captures. That's so weird. Okay, anyway. So if buff intensity is greater than or equal to settings dot... Well, it has to be greater than the slowdown per stack. It means we have multiple stacks, right? It's not equal to. So that means we have multiple stacks, which means we can increment the lifetime and reduce the stacks by 1. So really, we want to, again, convert this to using stacks instead. That way it's easier to understand what's going on. So buff dot intensity divided by slowdown per stack. And then if stacks is greater than 1, that means it's still alive. We'll reduce the stacks by 1 and we'll keep it alive. Which means also we have to reduce the intensity by slowdown per stack. So really I'm just going to say equal. I don't want any rounding error to come into play here. So I'm going to take slowdown per stack, divided by 100, multiplied by stacks. If we continuously do like addition and subtraction operations to the intensity, I worry that we're going to lose that value, lose some precision, and then either these equalities are going to start failing, or we're just going to have like an extra stack for no reason at all. So, because we're dealing with floats, this is a bit more finicky. In this case, I think this works. Okay, so putting that in the callback function, that will reduce it by 1 stack each time, renewing the buff so it doesn't die. And if the buff does die, then it dies. That's all we have to do. Nothing else really matters here after that. I think this also has to return something, if I'm not mistaken. It looks like... no, it doesn't return anything from the looks of it. But let me double check. Yeah, it doesn't return anything, so that should be okay. No instance of function matches the argument list. Argument types are weak pointer and buff. Weak pointer, buff, ref. I mean, this looks like it matches. Weak pointer, buff ref. No return value. Do I explicitly put the return value? Oh, it's a variable. Okay, that's why. Is there like a set callback function? Set. I don't see a set, so I'm just gonna set it equal to. But yeah, apparently it's just a variable. I don't even get to do anything else with that. Now this is happening every single tick, so I think that's okay. If this was happening every frame, I'd be more worried, because we are doing a struct copy, and we are setting a function pointer, so if this was happening every frame, I'd be a bit more worried, but this is not, so we're okay. And I think that's all the logic we need for this. Now, interestingly enough, we have to do the same thing for player. I'm almost tempted to just write it as a macro, because both player and monster use the same exact things. Let me see if there's any other behaviors we're missing. So, yes, we're missing how much damage we take. So if we have at least 4 stacks, then we have to take damage at this point in time. So I guess we don't even take damage at first. Okay, so the hurt function isn't even supposed to hurt us. It's more like, get what's in that radius or something. So I wonder... Well, we have 2 possibilities, right? We either deal 0 damage, which means the hurt flag will not apply, I think. Or we write a function that just detects things within that radius. I feel like we have that, though. I must have something like that, like a circle function or a radius function that gets us what's in that range. Because I don't want to hurt the monsters, but I don't think a damage function... I don't feel like I should have to use a damage function to check if things are in range. So let me see if there's another function kind of like this. Because we have hurt. It looks like that's all we have for this. Wait a second, but we have other things that have done AoEs in the past. Like, we've had, like, poison pools and stuff. How did those do it? Oh, okay. It just literally does game hurt. Huh, okay. I wonder then... Can we do 0 damage? I think we can do 0 damage. Let me see. Now I'm curious. So, what is the return value of a hurt function if 0 damage is taken? Is it false? I guess that's what we're looking for. So if you're dead, you always return false. That makes sense. Do we have any checks for, like, if it's equal to... if damage is equal to 0? I don't think so. Mod damage gets sealed. So if we provide a 0... I mean, 0... Sealing of 0 is still 0, even though it gets converted to a float. I kind of want to, like, write a test that says, hey, this is the behavior we expect, for the sake of testing it. I kind of want to try that. Like, let's say in monster tests, we tried to hurt for 0 damage. Because we have a deal 5 damage. But what I really want to test is, does it still say we get hurt? Like, the expected value is that hurt returns true when damage is actually dealt. Let's see if it returns true, just in general. If I do 0 here, result. So this doesn't really deal 0 damage, it's more like 0 damage results in true. Yeah, we're literally checking if the result returns true still. So we're gonna see if these two are equal. I think this is the expected. Yeah, expected is true. And then what do we get? And we should say even 0 damage should return true. Because I could run my game to check, but I'd rather just check it right here because we have a unit test for it. Let me see if I can build this. I don't know if it'll build with that other class not fully defined. So I might have to just clean that up first. But yeah, this is a good way to know, is see if the unit test fails or not. It looks like it's gonna build all the CPP files, so I do need to clean this up. What am I missing here, actually? I don't think I'm missing anything. Oh, up here. I just have... Right, so we were gonna say, okay, based on this, can we detect whether or not they get hurt or not? It's based on this return value. So if the behavior we're relying on relies on this return value being true, then this test has to pass, otherwise we can't use that. And we're using the unit test to effectively determine if we're allowed to use our code in a certain way. We don't have any tests that confirm that, so I have to literally write a test to check for that myself. And yeah, I could run the game and put a breakpoint and debug that, but if we're going to rely on this behavior from now on, then we should have a unit test in there that makes sure that behavior doesn't change at any point. Because if we break that, then we now have something in our game that a behavior we rely on in our game, but if we modify it, then we're potentially modifying that whatever we implemented with that behavior. Which is why I wanted to add a unit test, because this behavior dependency is new. I don't think I've ever had a use case for this before. The old school way would have been to grab the list of all the monsters, iterate through all of them, get the distance from monster to the effect, read all that, but why do that when this can provide it for us? Let's see. Okay, so it compiled it with the old stuff. Let me just hit recompile again. It compiled it with the typo in there, so that's fine. That's fair. Still failed. Conversion from float to int requires a narrowing conversion. Oh, right. Okay. We basically have to say, hey, I'm casting this. I specifically am getting an int out of this. How would that work? Hold on. I don't like that. Because we're dividing a float, and this could be off, right? I don't like that. Let me think about that for just a moment. Because what if we end up with like 6.99998? Then we get a 6. And then everything will be screwy. So I need to... If I really want this to be safe, I need to round it first. And I could round it, or I could just leave it as a float. Like, sure, we're going to treat it as an integer, but really it's a float, and this check will evaluate using floats, which actually works better for us. Because it will kind of fix itself. Floats have this little, like, precision thing. But being exact is also nice, right? If we use ints. So I like both. You know what? Let's go with round. I like round. I actually like that idea too. Let's actually be exact, right? It's kind of important. So if there's any rounding error, it gets fixed via this. There should not be more than 0.5 rounding error in any of these calculations ever, so we should be okay there. Yeah, I like this. Let's go with that. Okay, what else do we got? We got a syntax error. Okay, let's see it. Oh, I wasn't done here. That's fine. I'll just delete it for now. And add buff. Overload function differs only by return type. Oh. Did we add something we shouldn't have? Oh, I see. We just never fixed these. They're like... Why are they over here? Oh, they also use pushback, which is weird. Pushback is usually an indication they're old, or... But these look newer. They have more advanced stuff in it. I don't know. Anyway, you guys get these. I'm also gonna move them back over to where the other ones are, because that's where they belong. I don't know why they're way over there. Alright, unresolved external symbol and freeze ground update must return a value. That is true. We call return effect update. If elapsed time. And apparently we're missing some defines. Unresolved external symbol buff add buff. Buff reference add buff. In buff tests and monster tests. Those might have been cascading errors from the linker. Yeah, because it failed earlier. Okay, so let's run this test and see what happens. Oh, it literally... Gotta go back. Is it monster tests? Monster tests? Alright. So... Apparently all the test methods have disappeared. I have to I thought I rebuilt. Zero tests found. Build your solution. I must have not built the... Oh, I built the actual project, not the test suite. Okay, there we go. So I'm just gonna run this one and hope it passes. And we get our expected result. So this test does pass. So what this tells us is that even if we hurt something for 0 damage, it will still work. So we got to test that without having to actually run our game, and now the unit tests should make sure our project always behaves the way it's supposed to. Because we're making behavior that solely relies on that now. So I wonder, would it make sense for me to rename this function to like hurt area? Or get area, get hurt area? I don't know. But it's supposed to be for hurting things, so putting 0 here is just to prevent it from hurting things. So the damage actually depends on how many stacks we have. So we need to know... It's like a chicken and the egg thing. It's like, we do 0 damage, but we might have to actually do damage. Which is kind of weird, because it's like, if we hurt the target, do they get iframes? I don't think this does iframes either. Like, they're not invulnerable afterwards. And I think we need to check that. So in this test, can we check that we have no iframes? Monster should not have iframes. We should expect it's not invulnerable. So we can just check if test monster is not invulnerable. I guess we have to look at the iframe time. So has iframes should be false. There should be no invulnerability when they take 0 damage. Or I would even argue the hurt function shouldn't cause iframes at all, honestly. So yeah, it does not cause any iframes to occur. And I would also add that to the other one. Even if we take some damage, we shouldn't have iframes either. So I'm going to add it to the other test and make sure that doesn't apply. As in, when we decide to call this function, are responsible for giving iframes, which gives us more control over how the attack works. So yes, deal 5 damage does not apply iframes either. Good. Okay, so we made some assumptions about how our game works, and it turns out the test told us that our assumptions were correct. So now they're not assumptions anymore. So we're gonna go here to damage, and we're gonna initially do this with a 0 damage hit. And the reason why the iframe thing is important is because I'm about to hurt the monster again based on the stack count we get from right here. So after we add a stack, if the stack count is greater than or equal to the damage stack count, which is going to be stacks required for damage, then that means we have to actually deal damage. So we didn't do any damage here, which means this is like actually not hurting anything. So really I should make a comment here saying, note, we are using the hurt function to just get a range of targets. And maybe this is a sign that I should make another function that just gets stuff around a radius. Like maybe we need to split this up a little bit more, rather than use a hurt function for something it's not intended for. Hi Xenodor, this is the Microsoft CPP unit testing framework. Let me go back to that real quick. Yeah. If I look at the top here, you have to include the CPP unit test.h and ideally the namespace, so you're not typing out a million things. And then it provides a bunch of test macros for you to implement the Microsoft CPP unit testing framework. They also have a usage example in their header. And they also have, of course, documentation on their website. It's just easy to integrate with Visual Studio. The Google unit testing framework is also another one that integrates very well with Visual Studio. And that was going to be my second option if this one didn't work. It just turned out this one worked out fine, so I just ended up using that one. And I'm sure there's plenty of others, right? You don't even have to use anything built in. You can use a custom one, of course. But this one builds right into Visual Studio, so that's nice. So, if we do have enough stacks for damage, we're actually going to take damage at this point. So we're going to do M, hurt, and then we will do hurt damage. So the damage we'll do is settings dot, let's see, it's attack multiplier per stack multiplied by, so this is in percent, so I need to divide by 100 and then multiply it by the attack provided here, or the attack provided by the is it the monster? No, it's the, so if the monster's getting hurt, because this is a, because this is a friendly one, then that means we're using the player's attack damage. So we have to get the player, get player. So this is interesting. If it's a monster, we have to know in advance. Wait, we stored the damage, don't we? We do. Okay, never mind. I'm pretty sure we snapshot the damage from whatever the initial value was. So we're hurting for that much attack on upper level. find the Z value of the effect. No hurt flags. Okay. So that's that. Alright, anything else we're missing? So if we leave the freeze ground area, a stack gets removed immediately. Okay, so how would we do that? We'd have to have something to track, like, what's gone inside of here, and then check if they are now not inside of there. So we're now gonna have to store, like, a list of entities that have been hit by this target function. Okay. I kind of like that. Oh, maybe that's what I should call it. I should call it a target function. That might actually work better. Let me think about that for a second. Do I like that? Furthermore, would I actually like using something like that? I'm trying to think. Like, well, I remember it's called target instead of hurt. Maybe I'll just make hurt as like a pseudonym of it. That way I can call it hurt or target. But I don't know. It's performing the same thing. I think I'm overcomplicating it. Like, target would just be this, but with a 0 for the parameter. That's what I'm thinking right now. That way, we wouldn't get, like, a hurt flag. It would just say, here's all the targets in this range, right? I think that's what we want, and I'm gonna go for that. So maybe instead of hurt, or instead of target, call it get target? Get targets. So it'd still be a hurt list, but obviously they wouldn't get hurt by anything. Get targets. Now I'll just call it target. So it'd be like this, but it'd be something with no damage, right? I guess so. And it'd be everything in it, or... Now we could keep a hurt type. I think that's perfectly okay. Anything else? No hurt flags, I guess, because we're not going to be doing, like, true damage or anything. This is nothing damage related. Oh, I just realized, do we spawn a damage number when we do this? Because we shouldn't spawn a damage number if we're doing a harmless hit, right? So maybe that's what we include, because I think it will spawn a damage number, and so we would have to include that, but we can make this a default for when we call hurt from target. I kind of like that. So I think this is what the function prototype is going to look like. And we'll call hurt, but just with these proper parameters set. I kind of like that. And that way we have a simpler version of the function, specifically for grabbing things within a certain radius. So we can actually return hurt. It's just built in with some parameters that are special. So pause, radius, 0 damage on upper level, parameter, Z, hurt targets, and hurt flags is only going to be no damage number. That way it's purely for checking. I think I like that. That's actually very handy. So now I'm going to back up, and we're going to change this from game hurt to game target. And again, that just simplifies things. I don't have to include that. And yeah. We don't even have to check for hurt anymore because we know nothing's gonna be hurt. Or as in, they're going to be hurt, quote unquote, but that flag doesn't actually matter, so we can ignore it. So really this is like a no-op. I'm gonna put no-op hurt. That makes it clear that, hey, this is not useful for anything. That makes me want to not include it in this list though, right? Like, if it doesn't do anything, why is it in the return type? like, we don't need it in that case. In that case, we only need this part of it. So it'd turn into a standard vector with just the variance in it. And I guess that's okay. I kind of like that. Let's just turn it into that. So this doesn't return a hurt list, but a standard vector of a variant of monster or player pointer. But that does mean this return type is incompatible, isn't it? It would mean I would have to, like, grab a view out of this, which I think I would be okay with, but then I would have to deal with views. And if I have to deal with views, because I don't want to copy, that's kind of slow, if I can avoid it, I have to really figure out how to use it properly, or at least get the return type properly. Because I think the issue we ran into was the return type just not working out for us. Also, I'm gonna have to call it soon. I'm gonna have to stop programming pretty soon, because I gotta leave pretty soon for the day. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I want to turn this into a view or not. Because I could. Like, I'm pretty sure views won't let you return, like, just the raw type, right? Like, they won't... That doesn't make any sense. So the question is, how can we get, like, the return type reasonably out of a view function? Like, if we use a view and we want to return it for something else, how do we make sure that we're not, like this auto can be deduced, right? Is what I'm trying to figure out right now. But then it has me thinking, like, is even the view, like, temporary? Who knows? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But, well, the issue we were running into was, let's say this was in a header. Let me just put this in a header real quick. I think we have a test one. So I'm going to throw this in a header. It's called read. And... yeah, that doesn't need to be there. That's fine. And then we have here, we can call read, and we provide a vector of numbers. So let's do that. Actually, I don't have a vector of numbers anymore. Vector of ints, numbers. Let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I pass these into read, which should transform them, in theory. And so you can see here, at least IntelliSense can't pick up on what the type is. If I try compile, you can also see that there's no matching overload function found. Oh wait, that might just be views. Hold on. Yeah, I need to add views. Include ranges. Also transform, I think, needs algorithm. I'm pretty sure. And we... okay, maybe it doesn't. Anyways, I have to get rid of this thing I was testing earlier. That doesn't compile. Okay. Try build. So that succeeds. I'm trying to figure out what wouldn't succeed. Because when I tried something like this earlier, I think we ended up in a scenario where, like, I had a class, I had buff, that's what it was. We were messing with the buff stuff. And, like, it couldn't figure out what the return type was, and I'm like, well, why can't it figure it out? Maybe I was using it like this, that's why. It was like, int num in read numbers. And maybe, like, we couldn't figure it out that way. Because this returns a modified version of the numbers, multiplied by 2, I think, because I used transform view on it. So I was running into issues with this earlier, but for like a different custom class I made. So this is telling. This is saying that this is possible and can be done. Oh, this is also built in here, I just realized. Oh, hold on. So if I had this, but then I actually... Right, because this is a... When I just have the definition, and then the declaration is somewhere else, right? Okay, that might be what matters. Let me see here. So we have something like this. We we declared it earlier, but then we're defining the definition or function later. Maybe that's why. Maybe it can't auto that. I'm starting to think. Do you use Claude Code? I do not. Okay. That makes me wonder, can I get away with this then? So, the idea is we do a transform view here to return not necessarily a vector of this, but a view of a vector of these. That's what I'm thinking right now. So we're going to try it and see what happens. So this turns into an auto for now. I'm going to go back over here to the target function and just make this from a hurt list into an auto. So I think what ends up happening is this auto cannot be deduced, and then we run into other issues. And I'm not sure what I would do from there, so we'll see. But anyways, I'll pipe this into standard ranges transform. And then from here, we'll write our little function to transform it into another view that's going to return, let's see. So we wanted to return only the standard pair, or not pair, the standard variant part of this. Because we don't care about the hurt return value, we just want this part. So maybe it's this transformation that I'm trying to do that ends up causing issues, right? But we'll see. But I'm telling you I want this, which means I'm going to end up getting a range of all these. Maybe that'll work, maybe that won't. But what's going in here is a hurt list item. No, a hurt list. Hurt list item, yes. So we can just copy that in. I'm going to make a const ref item. And in here, we're going to return just the first value because it's a pair. And in theory, that might be all we have to do. I guess transform... Yeah, I probably just need to include it now. This probably doesn't have it. Well, we have ranges. I don't know why it's not working. Or IntelliSense doesn't like it. Let me just try build real quick. I'm sure that'll tell me. But we have ranges. Which, when we looked in the example, was apparently all we needed. Unless I included algorithm somewhere else, which is entirely possible. Maybe algorithm was in here. But we also have that header inside my main project, so... let's see. No matching call operator found. Okay. Well, that's fair. This looks like it's not right. Is it supposed to be views? Oh, it might be views. Oops. I didn't want ranges, I wanted views. Break. Stop. Let me go to target again. And... yeah. I get these confused all the time. I wanted views. Standard views transform. So now... no operator matches these operands. Const hurt list, range closure, standard variant. Okay, let me think about that. Const hurt list item reference. It's a hurt list. A hurt list full of hurt list items. Does this not translate? Maybe it doesn't. Oh, thank you. Thanks, Short Egg Roll. I appreciate that. Let's see what the compiler says. A function that... Okay, so this is what I got last time. A function that returns auto cannot be used before it is defined. So we have to define it somehow, I suppose, but the return type is kind of wacky, right? But I guess technically we know what the return type is. So I would have to write that out before I can use the function, which makes me think maybe this needs to be template specialization, but if it's template specialization, then that's gonna be annoying. So that's what we ran into before. So yeah, it's a matter of figuring out how to get that portion to work, if it can work that way at all. Now this is global. Now what happens if this was in a class, right? Like, if I just made another class... that's probably not good. Let me just put in here real quick. Would we then get that if it was in, like, this test class? I don't know. I'm gonna make it static. Let's see. So this is test1 read. And then define it here. Would that break it? I wonder. Well, now that that doesn't exist, let me see. I don't know if that would. Test read is inaccessible. Make it public real quick. And let's see here. Because I've been trying to figure this out over, like, what? The course of a few days. So, like, this works fine, but then the question is, what's different from my project, which is obviously much more complex, to something like this? Clearly it can deduce what this is. Why can't it deduce from my project? Right? Something must be different. Something doesn't work here. Just out of curiosity, let's see what happens when we search for this error. This is one method I recommend doing if you can't figure out what is going on, is to try and search for your error, right? Because a lot of times, if you've had that problem, somebody else has as well. So this looks like the same problem, like exported some kind of auto function and it can't be used before it's defined. Auto does not delay finding out the return type of the function. It just makes the compiler look at the implementation to find out what it is automatically. You will have to manually declare the return type in the header, since the code that includes the header has to know what the return type is. Okay, so I'm probably gonna have to type out a messy return type, and maybe that's just what's required, right? We do that for other templates, so I mean, I guess that makes sense. I'm just not familiar with it, and maybe that's why I'm so hesitant to do it. I'm thinking there must be a better way, right? But maybe there isn't, really. So if we look at this, we can try to deduce the return type from this, if we like. It's a standard ranges transform view from a standard ranges or of type standard ranges ref view of type const standard vector int. So essentially we have to do something similar, but for us. So maybe we just have to become familiar with this silly syntax. Alright, so let's make a standard ranges transform view object. Ranges transform view of standard ranges. Is it ref ranges or ref view? It's a ranges ref view. Ranges ref view. or square view of type, in this case, the type coming out of this is a const hurt list. So I think this would be the proper full return type. Although it wouldn't actually be a const hurt list coming out of this, would it? It would be a hurt list, a vector of hurt list items. Is that right? No, ref view of hurt list items, because the ref view is a list itself. In theory. I think, so a const hurt list item might actually be correct. I'm just going to try compiling this and seeing what happens. Because again, this, now we're in unexplored territory. Template constraint not satisfied. Type constraint failed. Atomic constraint evaluates to false. Oh, it has to be atomic? Is that why we, like, this all fails in the first place? Alright, hold on. How would I get it to be atomic? I wonder if there's any, like... I wonder if there's any examples of, like, standard views, the views themselves being stored or used somewhere. Because that would be interesting, right? I'm just trying to see if I could find something that kind of fits my use case. I mean, obviously we can look at transform view, but this is all like, it just uses it inline. Like, it never shows anything where we are, like, maybe we just bite the bullet and put it into, oh, there's standard ranges copy. Wait a second. That's interesting. Okay. So you can copy other ranges. Oh, I see. You just copy from one range to another range. Okay. Is that cheaper? I believe that would be the same as just doing standard copy, I'd imagine, because you're actually copying the results. So I don't think that provides a speed benefit. Like, the whole point of using a view would be I don't have to deal with any copying of objects. But then again, if it's temporary, right, it's gonna go away anyways, so I'm gonna need to copy it no matter what if I'm gonna have a unique version of it. So I guess we're gonna have to resort to copy. I guess we have no choice. I always try to mess around with this transform view stuff to try and figure out how to use it though, because it's interesting. But when I really think about it, it's like, we can't make a temporary of temporary stuff. It's just not going to exist anymore, right? Like, if I have a new hurt list generated from this function, or rather this function, it doesn't exist anywhere in memory. When this function's done, that memory is basically obsolete. It doesn't live anywhere, so the lifetime is only for this function. So I think even this is like the same problem with like a string view, right? This stuff only exists for this function. Once it's outside of there, it's deleted. You don't have access to that anymore. So even then this is wrong. So if anything, at least I would do a standard transform here to mark what I actually want to do. And first last with a destination. The destination will be a new vector we create, right? And it'll be a new vector of hurt list items, which, mind you, are small. It's just a variant of pointers. So it's not like this is a huge data structure containing targets. And so the transform would consist of, let's see, first is we're iterating through what? Well, actually, we're going to get a list from hurt, which is a standard vector of her list items. So really I want to store this temporarily, because we won't need the results after this. It would be a const... I guess it would be a const ref then. Or does it get deleted after that? Because it's a new list, so it exists for the lifetime of this function. So a const ref here is okay. A const hurt list ref of results. We could split it up, actually. Oh, I didn't think about that. We could split it up. It would look like this, and we would get hurt items. Well, no, we would have to put in a for loop or something. So really, it's just a hurt list. I guess item or initial targets? Or rather... full list? I'm gonna say full list because really we're gonna trim the list. We're gonna remove an entire element from that list, right? So full list with its transform on it. Like so, from begin to end. Destination is going to be a back inserter into targets. And the function is going to be, well, I deleted it, didn't I? But yeah, essentially, we just grab what we need from there and put it in. So it's going to be a hurt list item, const ref. And we're going to return only the first element of that pair. And that's what's going to be inserted into the list. And that works. Conceptually, this is easier to understand too. But this is a standard vector of just the variants with the pointers in them. So just this. And that's really all we need to do. Ideally, I would have liked to figure out some way to use the views, but then we realized, hey, we're actually not going to be able to anyway, so it is what it is. Alright, so what's wrong with this? No user-defined conversion from her list item to standard vector variant monster and player pointer. Let me think. Because we should return, let's see. Just this item, which gets inserted to here, it doesn't let us? Do I really just have to like do a standard for each or something? That's interesting. I was hoping, oh, maybe IntelliSense just being slow. Let me try a build. I'm like, I don't know if IntelliSense is happy or sad about this. But anyways, this is a good place to call it. I didn't realize that I wanted to do, like, grab everything in a position and radius without actually hurting it. So now we kind of have a function that kind of makes sense to do that. I was trying to do something silly with it. I do that a lot, though. I want to experiment with new stuff, so I always try at least a little bit. It's not accessible because variant uses private to inherit from variant base. What? Oh. We're definitely changing all that. Yeah, that's changing. So we're at a good place a good stopping point. We've got most of Freeze Ground implemented on the monster side, so we just have to do the player side next time. And those are the two Frost Mage abilities. So then we have to work on the Lightning Mage abilities, which we'll do tomorrow. And hopefully those won't be too complicated. Then we can move on to some other monsters. But the spellcasters at least will be ready. We still have to do the movement AI code for those, so that's gonna come up too. But yeah, this is wrong. We'll fix that tomorrow. Easy enough to fix. But yeah, I'm glad to be working on the actual game engine code again. In terms of implementing like monster behaviors and gameplay related stuff versus just optimizing. So that's nice. I hope everybody enjoyed today's stream. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you all tomorrow. Have a good one. Bye-bye.